Radio. Raheem here with Lou DiBella. We're at the Barclays, one of your New York homes, but definitely becoming a favorite. Obviously, this is a great way to start January, the next year, 2018. But before we get to next year, talk to me about how you feel about 2017. It was such a great year for boxing. How was it for you, and how was the close of it for the DiBella Entertainment?
Look, I mean, I got to promote a lot of great shows, particularly here at the Barclays Center. The year is going to close pretty strong for me, I think, on December 9th, where I have Tevin Farmer fighting for the IBF World Championship, and I think I'm going to have a world champion come late in the evening on December 9th. So I'm looking forward to that. That's a nice way to close the year. I'm bringing Broadway boxing back to BB King's, back to New York City. So I'm going to have my traditional season's beatings show on December 14th at BB King's. So the year's going to close strong. And look, it was a really good year for boxing in the sense that there were many important and quality fights. There was also a lot of shit, but there always is. I mean, but I think when you looked at 2017 and the fights that occurred, and you put it next to 2016, and there's no question that there was a better level of matchup in 2017, that more meaningful fights took place, that more matches were made that were the best against the best. So I think it was certainly a move in the right direction.
Well, you close the year on the big stage with Wilder having a fantastic performance, obviously.
Yeah, and look, going in, we talked about that fight, and I think that we both agreed that Stavern was Stavern. But that being said, it wasn't who he beat. It was how he did it.
No, I would agree. And it was one of those kind of Tyson moments where people left satisfied, even though the fight was incredibly short. They got what they felt they came for. But my point being that even at the end of that year with that big show, you created a rival. You have a rival here now officially. Before that fight and after that fight, we hadn't seen what Eddie Hearn was able to do there in Long Island. And the negotiations hadn't officially started. So now we're a little beyond that point.
I'd say the negotiations for the most part right now haven't really started. I mean, when you're reading about stuff on social media, and where a promoter's out there constantly feeding the press sort of like their perspective of the fight, denigrating the opponent, like Eddie's been denigrating Deontay, sort of throwing out percentages and negotiating positions to the press. When you're seeing that kind of stuff happening, you're not seeing a fight around the corner. When guys get behind closed doors and really do business and are having meaningful discussions that aren't being publicly spewed out all over the press, that's when you see a fight happen. So I don't really think at the moment Eddie and Joshua have any immediate intention of fighting Deontay, but I believe the fight will happen in due course, and hopefully by the end of 2018.
Well, what about this breakfast meeting that they've been touting?
It was a meeting, but right now, I don't think there's any chance in the world you're going to see Anthony Joshua fighting Deontay Wilder next, and I don't think there's Eddie has any intention of doing that whatsoever. And you know what? Look, he has, there are other things that are going to materialize. There are other opportunities that are going to be out there. Tyson Fury's in the gym right now. He's heavy. His weight's coming down. But you know what? I have people that have been around him and saying he's working really hard, and that he's
trying to get Tyson too, is from what I'm reading. Could you imagine a Fury Wilder matchup? You think he's close enough to something
Wilder
like that?
might be as bigger than Fury and Joshua.
And lastly, on this subject, I know you and Eddie like to wind each other up, but you made a big deal of you not being a part of that breakfast. Are you a part of this negotiation? Who's going to get sorted?
When there's really something happening, I'm confident I will be a part of it. Look, Eddie can say what he wants to say. That's another thing too. Is like, what if I'm so insignificant? Why does he keep talking about me? If I'm so insignificant, what's his obsession with, denigrating me? I'll be involved, and I've been involved with all of Deontay's fights since the first Hearn fight, and I'll be involved in this one, and when it gets closer to being real, I'll be more involved. But look, Eddie's a businessman ultimately, and so am I. And he's got a guy that can put shitloads of people into stadiums over there. He's the golden boy over there. Boxing is more mainstream I would say, in the UK right now than it is here. It's no fault of anyone's. It's just the state of the industry. That being said, you could put 80,000 people or 70,000 people in an arena in the UK, and you could still generate more money putting 20,000 people into an arena in Las Vegas. So, I mean, Eddie can say things like, well, Deontay should have no say in where it's going to be or the site or any of that kind of stuff. The reality is this: when the fight does happen, it's going to happen where it maximizes money. And it's going to happen in the manner that delivers the most bread and the most lettuce to the fighters and to the promotion. That's how it's going to happen, and that's how it always happens. And it's no accident. Remember when they announced, like, look at the recent big fights, Golovkin, Canelo, the major pay-per-view fights that have happened in recent years. They weren't negotiated in the press. They weren't negotiated on social media. Little videos on Facebook and that kind of stuff weren't determining when the deal was occurring. And in fact, generally, when those big fights happened, the announcements sort of popped up, and it wasn't like everyone was sitting there following their timeline on their Twitter account.
Yeah, a big fight.
Eddie plays Twitter a little bit like Donald Trump does.
A big fight is happening here January 20th.
I think it's going to be, look, I love this fight. And I'll tell you why.
We respect both fighters, and we know it's going to to be a good fight. People are loving the idea, but the fight that they were hoping for is Keith Thurman, obviously, and Errol Spence. Well, that's not able to happen now, but is that something?
Errol had to get into the ring. It's been a while, and Keith's not ready physically yet in January.
But he will be by the time this is over and these guys are ready for another one.
He'll be on cycle after this fight.
And he said he won't fight in 2018. How do you respond to that?
No, I think what he's saying is,
he won't fight Errol in 2018.
No, not necessarily, but it wouldn't be early in the year. I mean, I think that he had a very serious injury. He's had a long layoff. I don't think he's going to go right to the beast.
Can we make a Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford fight? Is this something that can happen?
I don't think anything in boxing is off the table. No matter
in the realm of probability.
In the realm of probability right now, with Bob's deal with ESPN and Crawford just moving to welterweight, and a guy like Jeff Hearn sitting there as a sitting duck, and Aaron being involved in Horn's promotion. I think there's reasons to think that, again, a Spence-Crawford fight wouldn't happen immediately. But again, if they both achieve dominance at 47, I think it's inevitable. The same way, generally dollars make sense.
You think the dollars for that fight, hopefully, at some point, could put aside the rest of the machinations?
I love this fight. Obviously, you have to look at Spence as a favorite. He's the younger guy, and he's more the welterweight. Lamont's a guy that's come up in weight, but Lamont's one of the more skilled. Lamont is a dog. I mean, when people say Lamont's a dog, I sat here and I watched the fight with Lamont Peterson and Danny Garcia, and I really wasn't sure who won. You know what I mean?
Let's say this. I think 2018 or 2017, with being such a good year and so many great fights, they'll debate who fight of the year was, what fight of the year was. Going into 2018, knowing how the table is set, just as a prediction, who do you think comes out of 2018 the biggest star in boxing?
Whatever heavyweight emerges in 2018, it could be the heavyweight division. It's going to be a product of what fights take place. I mean, honestly, until a Fury, and I'm putting Fury into the mix, until a Fury, a Joshua, a Wilder beat one of the others, beating Joseph Parker means shit. I mean, no offense to Joseph Parker, he's got a belt, he earned it, but I mean, come on. I mean, any of those three guys, I believe, would handle Joseph Parker. I think that Deontay's got to get in there and keep the ferocity and the knockout power going, and keep the streak of looking like a beast until that big fight happens. We're ready for a big fight right now, but I mean, when it happens, it happens.
So you're saying whoever emerges as the heavyweight dominant, that's the guy?
Yeah. Now, that being said,
I agree with that.
I think, Lomachenko's a great fighter. Does beating Rigondeaux make him the man? No, not really. I mean, I think that if Spence can knock off some Lamont and do it in style, get out there and beat another top welterweight, I think he's moving up that pound for pound list, and he has a chance of doing some big things. it's going to be interesting to see how 2018 develops, because at the moment it's not so clear what direction.
I gotta say, your initial reaction, I think, is correct. Whoever emerges heavyweight dominance, that's most likely going to be the guy.
The heavyweight division is going to be really, really important in 2018. It's a year where I think you're going to see the return of Tyson Fury. Yeah. God willing, and you know what? One thing I got to give Tyson credit for, he's been out there as a spokesperson about, emotional well-being and psychological health, and he's had issues that he's had to overcome, but he's back in the gym right now. He has a hearing coming up that could determine, when his return will be. I expect him to return to the picture in 2018. Joshua is obviously a big force in the division. Deontay's a big force. You're going to see more action among those three guys, and I think that the heavyweight division, no matter what breaks in 2018, I think you're going to see a lot of attention on the heavyweights.
Well, I like this city. It's still your city. Thanks for having me here, and keep bringing fights to New York so I can keep coming back. Radio Raheem with Lou DiBella.
Always a pleasure, Raheem.
Always a pleasure.